In this video, I'm going to show you two situations where there can be hidden traps in Premiere Pro that you may not be aware of, and I'm going to show you these using two common situations that many editors encounter. Let's say you have a 50 or 60 frames per second video clip on your timeline and you want to stabilize that because it needs smoothing out, and you also want to slow it down by 50%. You're working on a 25 frames per second sequence or a 30 frames per second sequence, and so the frame rate of your clip is double the frame rate of the sequence, so it should be just fine to slow it down by 50%. So we'll type Control R on the clip and change the speed to 50%. The clip's now twice as long, but it runs maybe a little bit more smoothly. And now we want to add Warp Stabiliser. So I'll just switch to Effects, and I keep Warp Stabiliser in my favorite effects bin. And we just drag that under the clip. But you immediately see that there's a warning that comes up that Warp Stabiliser and Speed cannot be used on the same clip. So what many people do in this situation is they nest the clip, they stabilize it in the nested clip, and then they reduce the speed of their nested clip to 50% in their timeline. But that is one of the hidden traps that's in Premiere that I'm telling you about. Let me demonstrate by a more extreme example, and I'm going to use this 200 frame per second clip so that we can slow it down by a factor of 8, and that'll really demonstrate where the problem lies. In this other sequence, I have two clips that were shot at 200 frames per second, and they're just of cyclists riding along, but they're really suitable candidates for being slowed down. I'm going to take this second clip and do what we just described. I'm going to nest it. Just let it be called Nested Sequence 04. I'm going to just open the nested sequence and I'm going to apply Warp Stabiliser to it. So I'll just go to Effects, and I'll pick Warp Stabiliser and drop that onto the clip. So it's analysing the clip, and now it has stabilised it. So we can just close down that nested sequence, and we've got the sequence 11 here with the nested clip, as you see, and it's been stabilised. So now we select it, type Control R, and change it to 12.5% of the speed. That's slowing it down by a factor of 8, which will take it from 200 frames per second down to 25. So press OK on that, and now we can just play the clip. And now you see what the trap is. It's really jerky motion. And if you step along frame by frame, you'll see that basically you move 8 frames before each movement frame occurs. The reason behind this is that when we nested that clip, and I'm just going to type Control Z to undo the changes that we made and take the nest back out of it. When we nested it, we created a situation where the clip on the nested sequence only had 1/8 of the information because it was on a 25p timeline. So to avoid falling into this trap, we should complete those operations in the opposite sequence. So instead of nesting the clip and stabilizing the nested clip, we should create the slow motion clip first of all. So type Control R and change it to 12.5%. and that extends the clip out. But now we have a clip that has the full information. It has all the frames of that 200 frame per second clip in it. And if I nest that clip, nested sequence 06, that's absolutely fine. And if I now drop Warp Stabiliser onto the nested clip, you see, first of all, it doesn't object. Now it's stabilizing it. And we now have the clip running in perfect slow motion, as you see, with every frame there. So it really matters what order you do things in. So the bottom line here is that you need to think about what's happening in the intermediate stages of processing, because if you're losing 7/8 of the information, then you're going to get that poor result that we saw earlier. I'm going to demonstrate that again with another situation which involves adjustment layers and what happens when you apply adjustment layers to a clip. In this scenario, let's assume that we have this 4K clip, this one here on a 1080p sequence in the timeline. So that is the sequence, it's 1080p. Let's assume, for example, it's a talking head video rather than this camera, and you've made a number of cuts in it as you go along. And you want to make a smooth zoom in. Potentially those cuts have been to cut out words or mistakes that you've made. But to do a smooth zoom in on this would mean somehow managing to coordinate the keyframes across these three clips, which can be quite tricky. So what a lot of people do in this situation to avoid having to coordinate the keyframes across all three clips is they add an adjustment layer. So let's just do that. We create a new adjustment layer and we drag that adjustment layer onto the timeline and we apply the transform effect to that. So I just go to effects and then I will pick up transform. So I'll just type in transform and take the transform effect, drag it onto this. And so we can maybe about here, for example, we can take the transform effect and we can animate that by clicking on position and clicking on scale. And then about here, after these two jump cuts, then we can change the scale to 200%. And we've zoomed in, so let's just play that. So you can see now we've smoothly zoomed in. So it's not a very well stabilized clip. We probably could have stabilized that before doing that, but we've zoomed in. Now the problem here is that by putting the 4K clip onto the 1080p timeline, we're losing 3/4 of the information because we're losing 50% horizontally and 50% vertically. And so that's really just got 1/4 of the amount of actual clip data. That's what's here in this clip. And then as we apply the adjustment layer and multiply that up by 200% in the zoom, we're zooming in to the already degraded clip, so we're not getting full quality out of that. It can be quite difficult to see this, and maybe I don't have a clip that's sharp enough, but let me see if I can compare the two situations. So at this point in the timeline, after the zoom has been done to 200%, then I'm just going to make a cut right across on the timeline, and I'm going to delete the adjustment layer. And instead of using the adjustment layer to go to 200%, I'm going to move the clip itself back to 100%. If we're just on the timeline here, that's using the adjustment layer and that's increasing the clip size itself. Now let's zoom in on this a bit. Let's zoom in to 200%. Just going to take the little hand here and go down to the bottom. I don't know if you can see that, but there is a significant difference in sharpness just down at this point. If I move off the adjustment layer and move on to the clip itself, the letters where it says Nano X are definitely sharper than they are in that situation. Let me just try and go into 400% and see if it becomes more obvious. So that's using the adjustment layer. So what's happening is that the clip is being cut down to 50%, and then the result of that is being magnified back up by 200%. So we're clearly losing some quality. And if I move on to the next, you can see that we've got a much sharper rendition of that particular part of the timeline. So just go back to fit everything in. So the point really is that what happens in intermediate steps in processing really affects the end result. So I hope you find those two things interesting. I hope they help you get higher quality in your videos. And if you got any benefit out of this, please give it a like, as it really does help the channel. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one.